Welcome to Barnstorming. I'm thrilled to have returning champion Terrain Myrix, who forgave the horrible faux pas of the last intern who misspelled his name. I'll tell you what, she is out of here, Terrain, and she's never going to work for
Thank you.
HBO.
I'm glad. Look, heads have to roll when something like that happens. I'm just glad that
Absolutely.
I'm glad that happened.
That's right. I mean, if your workers don't fear you, what good are you as a boss? I mean, that's really.
I watched Succession. I get it. I watched Succession. I know what's up.
I watch Game of Thrones, so I mean. And we also have Jay Grandis, good friend, co-facilitator with the Hub for Progress for me. Jay, I'm going to do some housekeeping, but Jay, why don't you say hi, introduce yourself a little bit. Terrain, we'll go back to you, make sure you can say hi, plug your things, then I'll do housekeeping. Go ahead, Jay.
Jay Grandis from Williamsport up in Lycoming County. I've been a long time LGBTQ plus and HIV advocate and activist and all-around troublemaker for many years in the area.
Absolutely. I feel like you've got a little bit more vibe to share than that, like, was it like, can you tell us the story about in last June in Mifflinburg with the guy with the baseball bat?
Oh yeah, that was a fun time. So here we are, we're doing an LGBTQ pride rally
and Black Lives Matter.
Yeah, we all teamed up.
It was walking the walk. That's right.
And so we tied up
Mifflinburg, which is whiter than Lewisburg and Williamsport.
That's whiter than a picket fence, let me tell you. So we're down there tying up 7 intersections in a safe manner. Every intersection had a block captain, and I happened to intentionally be the block captain for the one on the very end because I wanted to run interference if there was a problem. Well, don't you know, just my presence alone being there was enough to have a Trump supporter jump off his porch. His porch had the huge Trump banner covering the whole thing. And he brandished the metal baseball bat within inches of my face, like several times, and then pushed me into oncoming truck traffic. Fun day.
Yeah. I mean, I'm joking, but it wasn't. Like I showed up, I think, just a few minutes after, and it was, this shit is real. And it's not the kind of place where you necessarily feel like the town or, a lot of the firefighters and some of the local police were standing like in front of the fire station looking very unpleased that these people were in their town. So that's one of the things that, Jay, that, I've always, like, you have like an interesting combination of like, kind of like the fearlessness of somebody you want on your side in a bar fight, but like the calm aura of like a guru. It's like a really interesting combo. Do you feel seen a little bit right now?
Very.
And for those of us, we're doing video, but it's it's an auditory medium. Can you just explain your T-shirt, because I'm really loving it?
The Golden Girls stay golden. It was a birthday gift from my fiance, Joe.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much. And West Branch Pride, is that one place? I mean, you helped with the hub, obviously. West Branch Pride is an organization that you and some other folks have started kind of right when the pandemic, like right before, sorry.
Yeah, a year before the shutdown in 2020. We started forming in February of 2019. By September, we were incorporated and moving forward, trying to get a Pride Festival going. We finally got our date to have it at the biggest and most popular park within the city of Williamsport, but then COVID stopped us. So we're looking at next year. And we're also looking forward, in the next several years, we're trying to establish an LGBTQ community center in Williamsport to serve our whole rural region.
Yeah, I mean, off the top of my head, Harrisburg has one, Scranton maybe, or Wilkes-Barre?
I don't know about Scranton or Wilkes-Barre. The only ones that I can think of are Pittsburgh, the William Way Center in Philly, and down in Harrisburg.
So I was thinking closer to us in this area.
There's a new one up in Erie, thanks to the Pennsylvania Equality Project.
And that's cool. And we're going to circle back to that a little bit, but that's not closer than Pittsburgh.
Right.
Terrain.
Everything's like 4 hours away.
Yes. Terrain. Tell us about all the good, cool stuff you're doing.
I'm doing nothing as important as anything that's been mentioned so far. I have a podcast called Alcoholics, where me and my wife and often our friends come on and we have some drinks and talk about politics, at a national or state or sometimes local level. And it's a pretty good time. I also host a movie podcast. I watched the movie Office Space for the first time in my life. And I host that with my friend Arista, and that's called A Movie on the Rocks. But yeah, that's what I got going on. Just some.
I like that. Is that, how often is that kind of when you do it, or
we want to do it? We attempt to do it. How often do we attempt to do it? We attempt to do it like once a month. With my move, recently we didn't get one in for 1 month, so we're going to do 2 episodes this month. One we already did, again, Office Space, which interesting. And then later on in the month we're going to watch a horror movie at the suggestion of our next guest, and we'll do one later in the month. But yeah, we try to do it once a month. It's a fun time, and it helps me do my New Year's resolution, which is to watch more movies.
That's a good one. Do you know the horror movie?
It's called Audition. It is a Japanese horror film that I have never seen, and I am already incredibly scared of. So it's going to be great.
Is it is one of the catches that it's one you haven't seen, or does that matter?
That doesn't matter. We've done I think 4 episodes thus far. The first episode, I got to pick the movie, and of course I picked one of the greatest movies ever made, Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter. It was really, really good. My co-host surprisingly didn't like it, and I didn't understand that, but whatever. And we've done, I think Office Space is the one that I didn't see. That, and we did Black Dynamite, which I also did. I saw before, but I had no memory of seeing until as I was watching it, I remembered some of the jokes. But yeah, it just we pick a movie. Doesn't necessarily have to be a theme, but it's always a fun time.
We got Drew Wambach. It's no Mamma Mia 2, my man. Do you know Drew? Is this one of your?
Drew Wambach. Firstly, I love Drew Wambach very, very much. He is a wonderful human being. In fact, I've had him on Alcoholics. And before Arista and I started doing our podcast together, Arista had a podcast called Arista's Movie Adventure, where he would watch movies. It's essentially like we kind of like brought that together. But on his podcast, we watched Mamma Mia 2, a movie that I've never seen. In fact, I've never seen Mamma Mia 1. So it was an experience. It was an experience.
So this is a fun little sort of question that comes up sometimes. Like there's a group called Dad's Night, actually, which I've never talked about the podcast, but it's a thing here in Lewisburg. But it's funny because it's the easiest group to be in. You have to know a dad, have a dad, or be a dad. So that kind of covers everybody. Okay. But we have these sort of questions that we'll bring up sometimes. And one of the ones I like is like, what's a movie? I should have a phrase for these, sort of interesting conversation starters. What's a movie that like generally most people have seen that you haven't, and you'll lean into it, right? Like you'll be proud of it. Like I've never seen Forrest Gump, and I plan to die if I can not having seen it. So do you guys have one?
For me, it was the first Clerks movie. During my interview process, when I was being told by Radio Shack that I was being hired as a salaried manager, my training manager and the district manager told me I was not allowed to start my first day. They would hold off on scheduling me until I watched Clerks and South Park. I was not prepared to deal with the public until I watched them. So.
That's awful.
Right.
That's all. That would actively make me consider not taking that job. I have never seen one Star Wars movie. And here's the thing. There's nothing there. I don't think any of these, because there are a lot of properties that I haven't seen. I haven't seen Star Wars or Top Gun, or like, there are a lot of these things that I haven't seen. I don't necessarily like have the I don't have the venom to be like, I'm going to my grave without seeing this movie, but I have no like desire to seek it out. I don't need, what I do is instead of watching these movies, I read the Wikipedia page and I know I pretty much have the some, at least like the bare knowledge to deal with a conversation if I have to.
Yeah. Like, to be clear, if we were in a universe where the Joker existed and he sat me down and he said, you have to watch Forrest Gump or I'm going to kill half of Gotham. Well,
hang on. Wait, hang on. Because he's about to say that half of Gotham is going to get killed so he doesn't have to watch a movie. Let's do this. Please say that's true.
No. I would watch it. I would watch it. You know, I'm not that evil.
Look, half of Gotham would be dead if I had to watch Lord of the Rings. I never watched that either, and I don't plan on doing it.
Well, you know, they might die of old age in the amount of time if you watched all of the, you know, uncut. That's like, you know, 18 hours uncut. And hey, Leisha, who's a great friend of the Hub and friend of Barnstorming, she says Halloween. That's an interesting one. All right, this is going to turn into a movie
Freddy.
podcast.
Is that Jason or
neither? It's
Michael Myers, right?
Michael Myers.
Which
is that the same name as the comedian who did?
Yes, that's Mike Myers. He was the one who was next to Kanye when Kanye said that George Bush doesn't care about black people. He also is known for the Love Guru and Austin Powers.
I remember Kanye. I did not remember the comedian standing next to him, so I appreciate that kind of roundabout reference.
This is the dumb knowledge I have.
Yeah, but when you said that, actually, I remember his face, kind of like, right, like, what do I do? So
I hate truth. It's scary.
There's a little bit of housekeeping. One, we're glad you're here. The time may change, and even day, because other people who participate in Barnstorming. I'm trying to deal with. Speaking of clerks, I've got kind of a staff coup, if we could call them staff, like the other Get co-hosts who come on. They all want different days and times, so I don't really know where that's going to land. But please keep an eye out on all the things that we put out. Of course, if you're watching this live, that's great. We do also then take the audio here and put it on our normal podcasting platform. We have one episode up now with Commonwealth candidate David Spurgeon, who's running for Commonwealth Court. And it's so important that people vote 2020 and 2021 in Pennsylvania. If you're listening in Pennsylvania, Virginia is another state if you happen to be there. Most of our listeners are Pennsylvania. The last day to register to vote is the 18th of October. And we have more interviews with the other judicial candidates, Maria McLaughlin, who's running for Superior Court, Lori Dumas, who's running for Commonwealth Court with David Spurgeon, and both of them can win. And then Tamika Lane, who's running for, let's see, I hope I said the right thing about McLaughlin. She's running for Supreme Court, which is the highest. And then Commonwealth and Superior are equivalent but parallel, and that's Tamika Lane. And a lot of people, like, I actually got an email today from a candidate who will not be named, who's running in 2022, and it was like, 2022 is around the corner. This is really important. And I was like, God damn it, new rule: do not talk to me about 2022 unless the first thing out of your mouth is supporting the 2021 candidates. Like, I'm really hot under the collar about this. And
so that's where that post came from.
Oh, so you saw that. I was a little nicer there. I didn't curse. And I'm not saying the name of the candidate, but it really is like these judges, especially judges, if you don't know, like, they're not allowed to talk about issues, right? Or like judicial philosophy. So these are like the smartest, most qualified people running to fulfill one of the most important, like, intellectually rigorous things we ask people to do in government. And then they're left sort of saying, like, my mom was nice and I'm first generation, which is great, but, you know, they're not really able to. It's like trying to do like an NFL combine by watching them run three-legged races. What's that for? I don't know, throwing out a sports metaphor.
I don't follow the sports balls.
Terrain's unimpressed.
I'm literally in my head just like, I wonder what Kyler Murray's three-legged race time is.
I was just throwing spaghetti in my head against the interior wall to see what would stick from the sports side and the politics. Anyway, we have those coming up. Just last couple of housekeeping things. There will be merch very, very soon. We have a t-shirt coming out. You can support us if you go to barnstormingpa.org. There's a link there. You can give us a one-time donation to support the show through PayPal, or you can become a patron. There's different levels and merchandise. Everybody who's a patron will be getting invited to some sort of a party event later next year, hopefully the pandemic will be under control. Terrain, I'm really into that glass. That glass is like the size of an aquarium.
It's not that big.
I mean, I hope that's water and not vodka. Well, never mind.
What's that? I couldn't hear you over the sound of me drinking this vodka.
Yeah, that's hilarious. So I think that's my my housekeeping. We're going to talk about a couple of things. I want to touch briefly on today, October 11th, being both National Indigenous Day and also National Coming Out Day, and then catch up a little bit on this thing in Pennsylvania with what our beloved legislative leaders like Jake Corman in the state legislature in Harrisburg are doing to make Pennsylvania really close to Arizona in terms of basic election. I was using the word chicanery earlier, and I was thinking that I just wanted to change it to fuckery. This goes to something we said like 2 weeks ago. You know, for me, it's like 2020 is over. It is over. Biden won. Suck it. But it's more than like chest thumping. Like there's some real like problematic issues there. And then have a little bit of a deeper dive into this thing that I read over the weekend, part of by Ezra Klein. That is him talking about this guy David Shore, who I had never heard of, but it's a lot about basically what do we do, like what do we do in terms of really the Democratic Party. But if that's the sharp end of the spear of a larger progressive movement, then that matters to me. And some kind of a fun word game at the end. So Jay, could I pitch it to you? Could you talk a little bit about National Coming Out Day? I wanted this to somehow seem like I didn't say like, hey, could my gay friend talk about it? But
well, sometimes you got to do what you got to do.
and then I feel like I said it like it's like Trump, like my one gay friend. Listen, I have two gay friends.
There's my gay over there.
Right.
Look at him.
I almost spit water all over my computer. Look,
Love
last
it.
week it was the Monday after the Women's March, and I was begging some female friends. I was like, please come on, so that I don't not talk about it, but it's not me talking about it. And I invented the word mock-word, like male awkward.
Love it.
So that silence that's your cue.
Okay. So a lot of people, I'm sure, have heard about National Coming Out Day. This is the 33rd time, the 33rd year, the 33rd annual. I'm not sure the best way to put that. It started in 1988, 1 year after the National March on Washington for gay and lesbian rights. Now, that was not the first march on Washington for our issues. That the first one was back in '73, I think it was. But this one had 750,000 attendees, according to the Washington, D.C. police forces. So it's got like a nickname of being called the Great March. And their platform had 7 different demands from government leaders. A lot of it, well, before I get into the actual demands, it was just about every LGBTQ organization across the country. They had 2 meetings in preparation for that march, right? One was in New York, D.C., and one was in California. And it was definitely oriented from a feminist and gay liberation perspective, right? So they attacked racism. They attacked, support for reproductive rights. No more discrimination in the federal government. Like these were all these demands. And ACT UP, from New York City, AIDS Coalition to Unleash Power, they had a very prominent place in that. And so did the AIDS quilt, which was only a few years old at that point. But so here we are, 33 years later.
Was that on this whatever this is, the second Monday, or what was it?
No, it's always October 11th.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, the first one was in '88, the 1 year anniversary of the Great March. It was also about 10 years after Harvey Milk got assassinated in San Francisco.
Okay, that's excellent. That's so great. And I put, and again, auditory medium, but Jay and I talked a little bit earlier today, and then you shared this, which I thought was really great. It says, it's all right if you're not Oh,
ready to come out yet.
ready to come out yet?
If you're
Oh, I
not
see.
out yet.
Sorry, the little graphics of how many people are watching are covering it up for me. It's okay if you're not ready to come out yet. Great. And I love, like, in the drawing, you can just, the person's like kind of like, I'm not sure, kind of like tentative. Only come out when you feel you're ready, feel like you're ready. Yeah, that's obviously a really positive message. I'm glad you mentioned ACT UP. You know, that's something that I feel like we can all spend, like, broadly in the left talking about. I mean, I only know a teeny bit, but it seems like, you know, they were one of the movements. It's kind of like the 60s did a lot of cool stuff and things kind of died down. In the 80s was a little bit like, let's all, you know, wear polo shirts and kind of vanity, the bonfire of the vanities kind of a thing, Wall Street ethos, make money, the yuppies. And then with the AIDS epidemic and ACT UP, I mean, they brought a lot of sort of creative direct action kinds of protest moments, challenging, you know, authority. So that, you know, feels
They
like
were
a kind of
creative, militant, demanding.
militant. Yeah.
They had strategy behind everything that they did.
Yeah. Excellent.
So when North Central and Northeast PA back in 2016, because I'm 45 years old, so I was going
We
through
don't
junior high and high school.
we don't talk
When
about
the
those
AIDS
kinds of things.
crisis was really hitting in the 80s and
Mhm.
90s. And well, I've been living with HIV for 15 years. And before that, I was well read on it because I was doing end of life care for people, right? So in 2016, when our state legislature decided to play secretive backdoor politics, which almost eliminated HIV services funding for 12 rural counties of North Central and Northeast PA, we drew on the inspiration of the original ACT UP. And we got technical advice from the folks down in ACT UP Philly. I wrote letters to the editor multiple times to like 9 newspapers throughout the whole region. I was interviewed on TV news and all this other stuff. And you know how you mentioned earlier, like I probably would be a good person at being a bar fight because, I've kicked some ass. But I also learned like militancy doesn't get you everywhere every time unless you employ it in a very good way. Like I'm very good with my written word more than my spoken word. So those letters to the editor, they definitely made a difference. And that was a whole team effort. I just happened to be the face of it because even in 2016,
real quick, this was when you were in high school?
No, this is 2016 here in Williamsport.
Oh, that recent. Okay, gotcha.
I'm like, I believe he said 2016.
Listen, I don't have an excuse.
Look, sometimes stories are so compelling that you miss like a glaring detail because you're like, he's kicked some ass in a bar fight. Let's go.
Well, the reality is I was thinking back to like 88 and and where I was, and sort of a little anecdote, but keep going. So that was 2016. Yeah.
Yeah. And I just happened to be the face of it because within 3 days of my diagnosis back in 2006, I came out very publicly about it because I knew that education piece needed to be dealt with in a proper way. So I figured, well, I already came out. Well, I might as well come out one more time. Here I am. I'm HIV positive. I'm living with HIV, right? But things have come along so far that now a person living with HIV that takes their medication, they cannot pass it on to their sexual partners. We have multiple forms of medication that an HIV negative person can take where that'll prevent them from acquiring HIV. Like we've come a far way, but even still up here in our region, the stigma is worse than the disease. So in 2016, like I ended up becoming the face of but it was a whole team effort. Like it just looked like it was my big mouth running, but it was a lot of people.
No, I appreciate you being willing to to share that, and obviously, you talked about a double coming out, and so sharing it on our little podcast is, sounds like it was a lot less than that moment of coming out and being public about your HIV status. Is it something like you mentioned the stigma? Do you want to say anything more about that for yourself or for other people about the lingering effects of that? I mean, like I for sure remember in the 80s and like just as obviously is, I mean, you know, somebody on the outside of that experience, but it was like, it could feel like it was a bigger deal, but it's a persistent issue, the stigma.
Yes, it is. And you're right. HIV did not go away. It's still a deadly disease if you do not get tested, if you do not get treated. And what that stigma does is it delays or prevents so many people from even getting that test.
Well,
you don't get tested, you won't know.
Right. Right. So I don't remember. I don't know why. Well, I think I remember this now, but because of how it looked, sort of looking back. But when I was in 5th grade, we had to do little reports to my English class about a story read in the paper. I remember that I read a thing called, I think it was something like, they were saying, this would have been about 83. I think they were saying, now we know that this thing that was called like the gay plague we're going to call it AIDS. It was like something about that space, like the first time they were using that label. And yeah, I mean, I don't know why that stood out to me. It wasn't like, I mean, my parents weren't overtly homophobic, but it wasn't like my uncle was out and sort of everybody in the family. But yeah, I just always, because you were talking about being in high school, and I remember that being 5th grade, and I think maybe because the issue grew, I was like, I don't know why that stood out to me, but
it was called GRID, or the gay cancer.
The gay cancer.
Yeah.
I do remember actually my mom, who was pretty liberal, saying, because at the time, like, one of the right-wing, preachers was like, oh, this is God's, punishment. And she said, or she repeated this joke that, well, God must love lesbians.
God. Yeah, it's a shame to see the hard right, and especially the conservative Christians in our country still, 30, 40 years later, still hearing that, God hates fags. AIDS is God's condemnation on you. And what's actually happening now, the demographics of who acquires HIV every year, it keeps slanting more and more towards folks in the South, towards people of color, towards straight people, so it is not just a gay disease. But in the 80s and 90s, so many of those pundits, they were quick to like amplify the voices of people who hated gay people who hated anybody who should have just known their place and stayed at the bottom of the barrel.
Right. Well, thank you for sharing all of that. I know that as part of the Hub for Progress, I know that in Lidditz there was an event today. There was one in Center County. I imagine there were in some of the bigger cities. So I just want to, lift that up, and whoever's out there who's hearing this, whatever age you are, I just think it's so important, especially when we talk about rural areas. Jay and I have talked. You grew up in was it Montgomery?
Schuylkill County.
In Schuylkill.
Sorry, I'm gonna jump
in. Jump in.
Where in Schuylkill County?
North of the mountain, the village of Maria, outside Frackville and Mahanoy City.
Okay. I grew up in Pottsville.
I gotcha. All right.
It's super accepting there. They're really cool.
Things have changed. Like, I ran out of there like pretty much
joking.
Since I was legal age.
Yeah,
I think he's being sarcastic.
I'm being very facetious. No. I think that one of the, and I don't, I don't have nearly the experience. I don't have the experience in this, but I will say I do think it's one of the things incredibly important, like, to remember on this day, especially for like communities that are like more maybe not as historically accepting. They're like, people need to make sure that like they are, without centering themselves in it, make sure that that people know that they are a safe person, that you can divulge whatever information to, or be yourself around. Right. I know that, like, unfortunately, there's just so much, like you said, there's so much stigma, there's so much like hesitancy in truly being yourself around people, for fear of what they will do, for fear of what they will. I mean, growing up in Pottsville, it wasn't, it wasn't a super accepting community because of, one, the time, and two, the area. And I don't know. I mean, I left, so I don't know if it's changed. I hope it changed, y'all. You better have changed it. But like, it's super important to make sure that like the people around you know that you are someone who will, you know, who is accepting and will embrace them with love no matter what it is. Like, it's one of those things where it's like that is something that needs to be made very aware to people, because though you may think that you like, I exude this, everyone's gonna know that I'm safe. It's not necessarily as cut and dry as you think it would be. It's not necessarily something that someone is going to assume about you. So make sure to, you know, do whatever you can to make sure that people are aware that you are a safe and accepting person, and you can help, just at least let them feel like they can be themselves around you.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't have anything specific. Like that's
No,
just, I think that's very important.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. The National Coming Out Day has a lot of importance, right? Because the more LGBTQ plus people that are out there and visible, and you know, that can be seen and recognized, showing everybody not only do you know or love somebody in your family, in your friend system is LGBTQ. Like, statistics just bear that out. But we also need to remember that a lot of people in a lot of areas, it's still a safety issue. Like, we have to respect the fact that, yes, promoting the visibility is important, but we also need to respect people where they're at that moment in time.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
And especially if they're facing multiple layers of systems of oppression.
Mm-hmm.
Think about the Black community.
Yeah, like unfortunately, like black queer people are subjugated to an unnecessary risk of violence, and like sexual violence, and like there unfortunately are like just so many cases of like Black trans women ending up just straight up dead. Like it is something that needs to, like, there needs to be a community of support and safety for these people. You know what I mean? Like, people need to be able to feel safe, and there needs to be a more concerted effort to make sure that people are safe. And that matters in incredibly vulnerable communities, including like this community. It's unfair. It's obviously unfair that it's not like there's the systematic portion of it where people are due to systems that are in place are feeling oppressed, but then there's this like private level of violence that is enhanced by the fact that the systematic oppression makes it feel like it's acceptable, and it's absolutely not.
No, you're both just totally on point and on fire with all these comments. Bucknell University, where I used to work, my wife works, they had T-shirts that I think they still give out, maybe around this day or another, but they said gay. It was like gay ? Fine by me. And I thought that those were a really effective way to signal what you're saying, Terrain, right? Like this is totally. I'm a safe person. You can reach out to me, or talk to me or whatever. I'm gonna pivot a little bit, just because there's some other things we wanted to talk about, but this just occurred to me, Jay. Like, if someone wants, do you know off the top of your head? Like, I know that there are probably websites or phone numbers where people could reach out if they are questioning or have concerns. I can find these, put them in the show notes. But I'm talking about, like, if they're whether or not they're out, but if they're looking for help and they feel very isolated.
If people go to westbranchpride.com, we have a resources page there that we're still building, and specifically anybody that is like 25 or under that is facing some mental health struggles, or if you're starting to feel like you're leaning towards suicide, reach out to the Trevor Project. You can find their website on our website, and if you go to their website, not only can you chat with them, you can call them. They have trained psychological counselors on staff, and they've been operating for years.
Awesome. Thank you. It's one of those things, like, I'll say this because I hope it's useful. It's like, because I know those resources are there and can be found, like, I didn't think ahead of time to you know, it's not like in the 80s where it was like really important to have like the refrigerator magnet, or, you know what I mean? Like the phone number, but there are, you know, amazing resources. Is the Trevor Project, is that tied to Laramie? And is that the same? No, that was Matt.
That's the Shepherd
Matthew
Foundation.
Shepherd. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So we're not really going to do this justice, and there's, you know, but I do want to acknowledge, I'll just kind of set this up. I mean, I think most people who would be attracted to the show anyway know that historically this has been this thing called Columbus Day. You know, raise your hand if you were raised that Columbus was somebody to admire, like I was.
Oh,
you guys.
right.
Yeah, of course.
He was like a saint in elementary school.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, aside from being a product of his times, I feel like usually we should discount people a little bit for that. I'm pretty sure he was a colossal asshole on top of that. Not that I'm a Columbus expert, but I saw some things today. Leanne says, "Oh hell no." Maybe you can. We have to get you on here, Leanne, in the Facebook chat. I know somebody shared something today that was like so stomach turning, and this is kind of me being wimping out, but it was from his journals and his sailors' journals about how he, you know, they were bragging about being given indigenous women in the Caribbean where they first arrived to rape, and I was like, you know, I mean, I knew he was awful, and I was a little bit like, you know, okay, I get it. Like, I'm not really in the headspace right now to look more into that. And he was also colossally wrong. I mean, I think we all know that, but you know, when I was a kid, it was kind of like, oh, he was trying to find, you know, the routes to the spice trade, and this is all part of European imperialism. And no, he got lost, you know, kid, I was like, what, you know, that has got to be the most historically massive example of failing up, right?
Yeah. Yeah. If you are set out to find something and you find something entirely different, if you like, you don't find that thing and you just happen upon a place where people already live, they don't usually like give you accolades for that. You fucked up. You are not good at your job.
Yeah.
Right. And he didn't discover, let's just use the word discover, right? He didn't discover this continent to begin with. It was hundreds of years earlier that the Vikings from Europe discovered it. And there's new evidence that's come to light where 150 years before Columbus made the voyage, there were Italian, you know, ship people, navigators that knew about it.
That's interesting you say that, Jake, because I'm a little bit hesitant to say this because I haven't seen it recently, but it's probably similar research that like the Mediterranean and the North African coast as it wraps around, that yes, the sailors there who were this melange of Jewish and Islamic Moorish, and, you know, this kind of mixing, you know, this kind of we would recognize as, you know, cosmopolitan multiculturalism. They knew a lot about these things, and Columbus, you know, appropriated their knowledge, and that was part of his voyage. Leanne's Kiefer's mentioning in the chats, Native women were arrested while singing in DC today. Thank you for sharing that, Leanne. I don't know the news story, but we'll try and link it in the show notes when we do this later. Yes, and of course it was Amerigo Vespucci who put America on the map. So we know all of that. I guess, I mean, I kind of know the answer, but I'll set it up anyway. Like, why is anyone digging in on Columbus Day? Right? Like, why? Like,
what do you mean digging in?
Oh no, I got it. Because let me take this. It's because the left is trying to steal all of our fucking holidays. Like, the left is trying to take all of our holidays from us. The left says we can't say Merry Christmas anymore. The left doesn't care. The left is about to take Independence Day from us and call it, I don't know, like
Communism Day or something.
Communism Day or Marxist Day. Karl Marx's birthday is going to be a holiday because the left is coming after us. That's what this is about.
His birthday is July 4th. I don't know if you knew that.
I did not. Is that true?
It's not.
Okay, I didn't think so. You said it with a lot of confidence.
I know this every now and then. No,
totally it's another venture, another foray into the culture war that the right has decided, like, we're just gonna dig in on all of the stuff, right? Like, we're 100% gonna dig in on anything that like can be seen as any sort of change in the country, whether it be change that is necessary or change that is not. Like they're literally just like, I refuse to honor the people who were here and like actively, you know, hurt, genocide. Like we don't want to acknowledge that because there was a cool rhyme that we got when we were in school, and we like that rhyme. So we can't change. What do we change the rhyme to? That's crazy.
Right. And how about, you know, we take a moment to consider that, you know, for centuries now, the hard right has been the originators and perpetrators continually of the cancel culture.
Mhm.
Now we're starting to hold each other accountable, and
Right. I
to
think
hell
he,
with
for
us.
example, canceled millions and millions of Native Americans. I mean, both actively at the moment of contact and conquest, but also uh, if people don't know the just horrific horror history of the way that different churches had these relationships with the reservations in the Native American reservations in the United States, where they would ship the kids off to boarding schools to like educate them. And I'm not talking like 1700s. This was well into the 1900s and maybe even to the post-war period. And you know, literally canceled their language and their identity, make them shave their hair and all of that. So yeah, so the interesting thing here that I think is worth highlighting though is that Columbus Day originated in 1937, and someone actually just remembered this, put a picture on Facebook that they had found of a Klan march somewhere in Pennsylvania in like 1927, and people very openly, not like the Klan from the movies, like they're riding up at night to lynch somebody, and it's a little bit like deviant. This is like out in the open, and you know, of course, in the teens and the 20s, there was a lot of anti-immigration fear. A lot of it was directed at Catholics from Southern Europe and other parts of Europe, and also Jews. And so the KKK had a big resurgence in that period. It's sort of, you know, regular racism, but also directed at Catholics. And I think it's pretty well known. Leanne mentions the Knights of Columbus, but in general, I know in other places, whether or not they were tied to the Knights of Columbus, which is a Catholic lay organization, they were you know, latching onto Columbus was a way to say, hey, we're part of white America too, right? It is sort of the worst part of like using whiteness as a category in America to erase whatever stigma was being thrown at you. This is true with the Irish also. So, you know, that's some of the origin of Columbus Day. Yeah, Terrain.
I thought, and I'm trying to like remember. Sorry, I so full disclosure, I took like a real long nap today, and I woke up. I have a
And you found a new continent.
I I have a group chat that I have a group text chat, and I took a long nap, and I woke up to see like a discussion about Columbus Day and the origins of Columbus Day. And from what I learned in that chat, and I do apologize if any of this is not true, please, if anyone finds that this is not true, for the love of goodness, correct me immediately. But it looks like from what I gathered from what they were talking about, there was like a lynching in America of like 11 Italians, which was the largest largest lynching at one time of a group of people. And so I believe it was I believe it was President Harrison at the time, had Columbus Day as a one-time celebration to celebrate the Italian people and to essentially apologize for the amount of violence that was done on that day. I believe that's what it was, based on what I got from waking up and reading a bunch of text messages.
I think it's the 1891 lynchings in New Orleans is probably,
yes,
you know,
in New Orleans. Thank you. Yes. Yeah. All right. Good. So I did. All right. Good. I thought I was.
But and so on the one hand, like to me, there should never be a like oppression Olympics or whatever.
Yes.
You know,
See,
like we should not do that. But
Can I-
real quick, just let me say, yeah, we'll go ahead.
Yeah. No. You go. It's your show.
I was going to say, like, of course that was awful, right? But that, I mean, A, that's no reason to lean into Columbus once you know better about who he is. But B, it's like 11. Okay, that's awful. How many people in the Middle Passage? How many people who were enslaved were killed during slavery? You know, I mean, all of that. I mean, how many people through Jim Crow? And like, people can't even put their arms around Martin Luther King Day. It's like, come on, you know. Like,
I think that's a very good point. Like one of the again, we don't want to do the oppression Olympics. We don't no one wants that. We understand a lot of people were like, we just don't want to do that. However, like one of the things that was in the discussion, which I think is valid. My one friend, who I will not name, my one friend was like I have such a he's Italian, and he's like, I have this like horrible like feeling on Columbus Day because I want a day that celebrates Italians, but I absolutely hate that we get Columbus Day because Columbus was an absolutely horrible person. And it's like, why can't he's like, I teeter under the like, I want to be able to celebrate Italian, like I want to be able to celebrate Italians, but I hate that it's Columbus. And it's like, I'm like, I get that, that's true. And he pointed out why it is the Italians were, they had a rough time when they came to America. And I'm just like, yeah, I agree. I don't think there's a Halloween. I'm sorry, Halloween. Jeez. I don't think that there's a holiday that like celebrates the Chinese, and we had the Chinese Exclusion Act. Like there's a lot of I get that. That is rough. That is awful. And because it's been here for so long, I get that it's like I have this like connection to it, but I hate the connection because it's also connected with this person that I found out is absolutely horrific. And it's like, yeah, like it's one of those things where, like, I understand it, but like, I'd rather, I think in the grand scheme, it is much better to just drop it and celebrate Indigenous people for the shit that they had to deal with. Like, I think that what they had to deal with is terrible, and they deserve more than just a holiday. Like, that's kind of where holidays don't change the absolutely horrific things that have happened to people. So it's kind of one of the things where it's like, how do we honor people? And I'm like, and then they're like, I guess we'll give them a day. And it's like, I guess,
I know,
that's also not right.
It's
like,
so
it's not right.
It's
difficult. It's so difficult.
So right. Like, gee, I'm sorry that my nation or my tax dollars or, like for me, like, my people killed you and your culture. Here's a crock pot, here's a holiday.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's fine, it's nice, but it should be like the beginning of like a process of truth and reconciliation, like not like you get a big gold star. I think that's part of it. I have a great solution for Italian American Day. How about, there's a lot of important Italian, we could have a Cuomo Day.
Oh yeah.
Mario Cuomo, right? Mario Cuomo Day?
Yeah. The elder.
Okay.
Yeah.
Chris Cuomo Day.
Oh yeah, Chris.
Leanne said the Feast of San Gennaro. That's celebrated like a lot in the coal region, like Scranton, Williamsport,
really?
Or Wilkes-Barre.
I mean, I actually literally went today and looked at the Wikipedia famous Italian Americans, and there are a gazillion. But I was like, Sinatra. It's like, I think you're better off doing like Italian American.
It's legitimately, it's almost like y'all were in my group chat because they were like, well, what about Vespucci Day? What about
nah?
Someone did say Sinatra Day, and they're like, we can't do Sinatra.
Speaking of which, quickly, somebody pointed this out to me that I only recently figured out that Ronan Farrow is Mia Farrow's son. If you don't know, Ronan Farrow's a great author. I know. I was like Kiefer Sutherland, Donald Sutherland. I just I don't know. I'm a little dense. Like, I'm smart in some ways and I'm pretty dense in others. But anyway, if you look at Woody Allen, Frank Sinatra,
that Ronan guy has a last name that I remember for some reason.
So if you look at Ronan Farrow, Woody Allen, and Frank Sinatra at like the same, like when Woody Allen and Sinatra were roughly the age Ronan Farrow is, you go, oh, I don't know that Woody Allen is Ronan Farrow's real father. That's a fun thing.
Ronan loves when people talk about that.
I'm sure he does. I mean, I now I feel like a total schmuck, but like, I guess it's sort of known that Sinatra and Mia maybe had an affair or a fling or something. Well, we're up to about minute 15 of the agenda. It's 8:50. So oops. So here's what I propose. First of all, Terrain, stop macking my guests. Okay. Like Leanne, she was on here first, so I get her first. I see what you're doing in the chat where you're asking Leanne to come on to your show. I'm totally kidding. There's an abundance of smart and creative, insightful people. So let's talk for like a minute about the PA, the Pennsylvania GOP, because I think that for Democrats, like in the broader context, if I were an elected Democratic official, it's a little tough. Well, what am I saying? I am one at borough council, but if I was one at a much higher level, like Pennsylvania legislature or Congress or like Biden, you want to focus on what the things we're going to do to make people's lives better, right? Like you don't want to spend a lot of your time relitigating all this bullshit about the 2020 election. At the same time, somebody's got to play defense, right? Because it's like assuming that the system will work that gets us into these problems in the first place where I remember the first time I read about this was because of 2000 and Florida and how much the Florida GOP then did to strip people of their voting rights, doing some of the same kinds of things, right? And I know like Jay and I have probably both been in the case of like looking at voter rolls and voter files, and it's easy to see that like you could pull a list of people who died, and you could pull a list of people in Pennsylvania, and you could look at the voter rolls, and you could find matches, right? You can create the illusion that there are issues. And so in general, what I'm saying is like, there's this, we have to play defense, because if not, people can do things that seem legitimate, right? This is one of the ones that came up in some of the articles that I was reading, is this whole issue about like, well, there are dead people who have died and they're still on the voter rolls. And I mean, I'll just throw this out there, like, and ask you all, like, is that even a problem? Is it a problem that there are dead people in the voter rolls?
No, because they don't vote.
Right.
Like they don't vote. Like, I'm sorry.
Well,
like,
except for a few Trump supporters that were deceased, in 2020.
Except
in fact, I'm glad you brought that up, Jay. Some of the only examples we know exactly are Trump supporters. In 2016, in my own county, there was an election worker, like somebody who worked at the polls, who got in real trouble, and it was kind of sad, but was trying to help somebody vote, but he overstepped his bounds of what he was allowed to do. Yeah, so even recently, it's that. So in Pennsylvania, under the interesting thing here that I want to highlight is Mastriano, who a lot of us have heard of, who's I really try and be vitriolic about people, but he really seems to me just an awful. The positions he takes and things he says are just really incredibly awful. So he was the one leading the charge that Pennsylvania should be like Arizona and Maricopa County. And I had missed this. I don't know if you all saw this, but Jake Corman, who is the I don't know, he's in the leadership. He's like the number 2. He's from Center County. He's the number 2 Republican in the Senate, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong, somebody. Anyway, he stripped Mastriano in August of his position investigating this and gave it to this guy, Kevin. Oh my God, I think his name is Douche.
Oh,
I just realized.
Please let his name be Douche.
I really think it is. It's D-U-S-H, Chris Douche. I just realized his name is Chris Douche, D-U-S-H. My.
Now, I hate to be that guy.
Please.
Could it be Dush? D-U-S-H.
Well, one of the people that follow the Hub for Progress on Facebook, he is a somewhat prolific letter to the editor writer down in the Daily Item newspaper in the Shamokin area. He the day we were down a week and a half ago in Harrisburg for the PA rally for trans youth, he was on the other side of the Capitol building presenting the Douche Award now.
There we go. Good.
Douche Award.
Good. We're good. All right.
I've heard it pronounced, and I'm gonna say I'm pretty sure it's douche, and I just missed that.
I'm with that.
But I mean, I don't know if you all, this just reminds me, last week we did a really awesome thing with signs from the Women's March, and one of my favorite ones that Kate DePasquale got a picture of was about Abbott, and it said, I would call Abbott a cunt, but he lacks depth and warmth. And I was like, I mean, that is some tremendous signage work right there. So I just wanted to lift it. So Chris Douche.
We're all adults, right? We're all adults.
Yeah, right.
Well, I'm really
all of a sudden we're all 10 again.
I don't think I knew what it was when I 14. Anyway, you were a precocious 10-year-old Jay. So basically, though, the interesting thing here is like I don't know. I'm just speculating, but Mastriano has a huge ambition, and so I think part of this is Jake Corman was like no, and like really smacked him down, and then turned around and gave the same gig basically to Chris Douche, who's also a senator and is just as right wing. That's one of the things I wanted to say. So I don't want people to think that Corman is somehow trying to like tamp this down. Jake Corman supposedly is a more like institutional Republican. Is the kind of person I will say that I thought was going to try and pull the party out of Trump's grip.
Actions speak louder than words.
Mm-hmm. Jay, 100% Jay, and they're still pursuing this. And the whole thing, like Terrain said, people do not. Okay, Leanne. Okay, you got the audition. You nailed it. Okay, she's got Beavis and Butthead. You should do in the comments. Now we're in a bidding war. Terrain, she gets $100. There's actually no money on the table. I'm just kidding. I don't want to inflate expectations. So, yeah, he's trying to have his cake and eat it too by continuing to promote this. And it just makes my head explode. And if you guys want to say anything, but this, like, and I've heard Republicans say this. They're like, well, people don't trust the election integrity because a lot of them think the election was stolen. And I'm like,
and who knows why?
Why do they think it was stolen?
I can't figure it out. I mean, maybe it's just we have problems with our institutions, and there's just
it has nothing to do with the verifiable facts.
No, it's hard. It's hard for people to believe that elections are legitimate when all of our leaders are saying that they're not legitimate. I don't get the correlation, but it's whatever, I guess.
They accepted their own election in November.
That's always the best, right?
That's the best. Yeah, sorry.
No, you're absolutely right. You were going to the same place I did earlier. It's just there's no way the presidential election was fair. We need to audit it. My election in the same state where I won.
No, this is what it was. We were like, we stole the election for Biden, but we didn't want you to get on to it. So we let the Republican representatives win. That's how devious the plan is.
That's such a democratic thing to do.
That's a democratic. Democrats.
No, I'm not.
Right.
No, I won't take that. I won't do
that. All right. So we could revisit that. And I think it's important for people like us to shine a light on it, just to circle back to what I was saying, because I legitimately think it's a little bit tricky sometimes, for high level Democrats. Like, they have to play defense, but they also don't want to give this a lot of oxygen, which means that sometimes it comes back, to people like us in independent media, average citizens, to keep a bright spotlight on this, because I personally think it's a little problematic sometimes, because for the reason I said, they want to be forward thinking and not seem like they're constantly looking backwards. So we've got 5 minutes. Do you guys, do you want to talk about the New York Times thing for a hot minute?
Well, our hot
the
minutes
annual
are 15 to 25 minutes.
Yeah, I left 20 minutes for the deep dive on this piece. Should I set it up? Why don't I set it up just a little bit? This was a piece in the New York Times, and if you ask me, if you can't get the New York Times, I'll get you a PDF. Until the New York Times figures out what I'm doing. But basically, the core of it is, I'll boil it down to this from the article, is whether or not Democrats are quote unquote in trouble. I'm going to read a couple of sentences. So Ezra Klein is talking about a person named David Shore, who does political modeling and what's called predictive modeling, which is basically trying to figure out what's going to happen using a complicated set of underlying factors. At the heart of Shore's frenzied work is the fear that Democrats are sleepwalking into a catastrophe. And that catastrophe is that that no matter how many votes they get nationally, because of structural differences, especially about how the Senate is structured, but also about how votes in general are highly polarized around both geography and education, that no amount of outperforming Republicans will actually enable them to control a majority in the House or in the Senate. And let's see, one other quote real quick.
Really quick.
Go ahead.
Exactly. And several very front-running public GOP officials have been recorded on video on all these different OAN and Fox News and everything, saying pretty much exactly that. Our strategy at the state level, and it's up to 18 states right now with the voter suppression bills, our strategy is to make sure the Democrats can never win.
There for sure, and that's one of the reasons why, I mean, it's a little bit, and I feel like Republicans will say oh, well, the Democrats, for example, wanting to make Puerto Rico and DC states, Democrats are just trying to change the rules so they get power. And I'm like, well, yeah, that's what both sides are doing. So let's stop pretending there isn't an angle to that. But part of the reason is that when you look at different sets of numbers, like I don't have them right in front of me, but in 2020, literally Biden won more votes across the country, right? And so if you also look at how many votes in a Senate election, for example, in 2018, when the House went to Pelosi and the Democrats, but the Democrats in the Senate lost seats. They lost the number of seats they had, but they won more votes nationally. And like, I get that frustration. I mean, one thing I want to say is I find it a little frustrating when articles like this and in general national political media use that kind of framework. That basically they say like Democrats should be in power because they got more votes. And I'm like, but it matters where you get them, right? Like, I get that that's a problem, but I feel like we sort of feed this kind of frustration on the national left because people will say, well, look, Democrats got more votes. I'm like, but it doesn't fucking matter if they were in California and New York. So there's no, and part of my point is there's no strategy to derive from that. There's no strategy that helps us go from that to say, what do we do about North and South Dakota? Like, I've hashtagged Unite the Dakotas as kind of a joke about this because they were weirdly, literally made by Republicans to offset Southern power back pre-Civil War. They weren't meant to be separate states. It was a way to rig the electoral college back then.
See, I disagree because
Go ahead, please.
I think that there is a strategy. It is not necessarily a feasible strategy, but there is a strategy. The strategy is elect Democrats that are going to change this fucking system. Elect Democrats that are going to change, that are going to get rid of this electoral college nonsense and allow the person who gets the most votes to become the president. Elect Democrats who are going to do their best to change the Senate influence, like destroying the filibuster, which makes it so that states with states with very, very small populations don't get to hijack the agenda of the majority of the American people. Like, unfortunately, we live in a system that we have made that has, when it has when in its inception and continually has made compromises in order to benefit usually like rich white folks. But like in this specific we're talking about not canceling out, but making sure that the votes of people in more areas with people of color are sort of diluted. And like, for example, if you look at, I can't remember the specific, remember the specific data, but it shows that like a vote in like a small like area like Montana is more powerful than a vote in like somewhere with a higher population, like with a higher population density. Like, that's just the truth. The truth is the strategy for Democrats, which they are not using because you can't put this as the forward face out and to win nationally. And I kind of understand that. But the strategy is elect people who are going to change this absolutely broken and corrupt and awful system that will make it so that the will of the people is actually a striving point.
But Terrain, that's not a great messaging strategy, right? I'm going to run against.
I said that for sure. This is not a good message, but it is.
But then I feel, and feel free to smack me down, but like the sort of the sort of concern and frustration, I'll say, that I hear in your voice, which I agree with, but I feel like it's often directed at the Democratic Party or politicians, like, why don't you fix this? And I'm like, they don't have the tools to fix it because it is impossible to win in these races running on I'm going to end the electoral college. Like, that's not a winning message. So you're like, just fix it. And I'm like, well, how the hell are we supposed to?
I'm not. Whoa, no. Let's be clear about what I said. I didn't say just fix it. I said this is how you fix it. I have no doubt that this is an incredibly difficult task and that it is honestly like incredibly not impossible, but incredibly improbable to get the right amount of Democrats in the House, the right amount of Democrats in the Senate that'll blow up the nonsense that we are seeing, right? So there are concerted efforts. Let's talk about the Electoral College. There are a bunch of states that are passing legislation in their states, the Electoral College Pact, where they when they can get enough states that add to 270, they will enact that whoever gets the popular votes gets their state electoral votes, right? So this is a slow crawl for a problem that is very, very prevalent. Do I think that it's, that's unfortunately that's the strategy that they have to do, but it also takes winning those state legislatures and winning those states governors mansions. Like that is very important. And I absolutely agree on this point that is on the screen right here, which is pass universal healthcare and strengthen unions. That is super important. If we're talking about doing a bunch of shit that's super important, the Build Back Better Act, which has a terrible name but is absolutely wonderful in what is in it, is a huge thing, and that will test the theory of, if Democrats get shit done that's important and that is important to the people that they can feel, then they will win more seats in areas that they don't usually win. That is the test case. And the fact that we are having so much trouble solving that test, like the Democrats are having a lot of trouble, and I hate the Dems in disarray storyline as well. But in this specific instance, it is Democrats fighting with other Democrats in order to do this. Like that's unfortunately. So I hate the narrative, but in this case, that is what the narrative is.
But one of the things that I think is important to lift up is that, and I don't think that this, I agree with you. Like I find that very lazy journalism. And this article, which was long and interesting, because the headline was a little misleading, because in a way I feel like it brought in a lot more other voices. If you got towards the end of it and brought in Michael Pod, I don't know how to pronounce his name, Podhorzer, who's the data director for the AFL-CIO, Anat Shenker-Rosario, who's a messaging guru and expert that I turn to and rely on a lot. But anyway, like the article on the one hand was a little bit, and this guy's sure that they're focusing on saying the Democrats are sleepwalking into this. And I think they're not actually. I think a lot of people like Terrain, like you and me, who are, just sort of grassroots people and people on up, I think they know the problems. Mm-hmm. It's kind of what we were saying is the solution is hard, right? Like to move away from the Electoral College, or to, like, I love what you said about the, the national, I forget the name of it, the Electoral College Pact, with that thing is really an effective way to get around the Constitution, right? Because it relies on the states to pass it. But, Democrats need to run and win on things that they can win on, like unions and healthcare and those things, in order to then go back and fix the system, right? And that's not as simple as, and this is not what you were saying, but that's not as simple as just saying, like, just fix it. Like, I feel like there's a lot of Manchin rage out there that's like, oh, the Democrats should just punish them. I'm like, what do you think they're going to do to Manchin, right? I mean, do you not remember that between like Trump winning and the Georgia runoffs, we didn't even have the Senate? Like we barely had it. So I guess my point, which is probably I stepped on like 7 times, is like, we know what some of the answers are, like change the system. They're not that easy to implement. And for the media, or for, rank and file people or Democrats, I don't have a great answer either, but to just kind of like stamp our feet and say like, well, this should just be different, ignores the reality of how political power is structured and organized. And it's kind of diffuse.
Right. Especially when you have one political party trying to make sure that trying to make it easier for every eligible, legitimate voter to vote. And then you have, on the other hand, the other party who are passing all of these voter suppression bills, trying to make sure that we cannot vote. Not easily, anyway.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, we sort of come full circle, and actually, maybe this helps with messaging a little bit in the messaging question. I think there was some good stuff in this article. Maybe we'll find a way to come back to it. Not so much David Shore, but some of the other things. But it's about the messaging and like how you run. Like when you're running a campaign, you want to energize people, and what that is. Like there was a little bit, I felt like, a kind of a false dichotomy about whether it's kind of who you are, the policies you run on. I mean, some policies really can energize people. Look at like the wall and Trump's base, like that energized them. And you turn that around, and Jay and I were in the thick of it last year. Talking to people about how this election mattered because we had to protect democracy from a coup, basically, was very energizing. And
exhausting. It led to a lot of burnout with a lot of people.
No, it did. And in a way, coming full circle to the PA GOP and what we were saying about trying to do these election integrity things, that's one of the reasons I think they're getting some traction, is because a lot of the people who were pushing to protect the election, they got tired. Where it's hard to have street marches every day to protect democracy. But I think that is an energizing message, right? Like, people need to vote, people need to be able to vote. I feel like we're on pretty firm ground when we get Republicans arguing about why people shouldn't be able to vote. you know, because they just look stupid.
Mhm.
Okay. Any last thoughts on the David Shore? Can we do the word thing? Because
Yeah,
it's
I have
fun.
a billion. I could talk for hours about this, but I understand that there's a time crunch because we 1,000,000,000% went overtime. So I'm done.
No, this always happens. I mean, every time I do the agenda, I do 6 things and then I cut it to 4, and I know that 2 is really probably the most you can ever get to, but whatever.
And there's only 3 of us.
Yeah. Listen, we've had this with 6 or 7 people, but
That's wild.
that is wild. That was like once, and it was actually right after the insurrection. I think it was even that night, and
That was a very good episode. I didn't know that there were. I remember. I forgot that. Like my thing was, I forgot that like people like showed up after. But I remember listening to that episode.
Thank you.
Like the reaction to the insurrection. That was a very good episode.
I will say that it is the most listened to of all of ours by a long shot. So here's the thing. I saw this, and apparently the Washington Post and Mensa do this, and let me see if I can bring. Maybe I'll go back to sharing my screen. So it's a fun little game where there's a word, and you take a letter and you change it or remove it, and then the point is to come up with a definition of this new word. So let me see. Okay, yeah, all right. This always gets a little bit. Was that me somehow? No,
I have my phone in my lap for this specific reason.
That's really tiny.
I had a friend on my podcast once who like their phone kept going off and it had on their table. And I'm like, you gotta move that phone, man.
Oh, that was me. My bad.
Oh, no problem.
How dare you?
So the first one is
hang on. Yeah. You apologize right now for that.
I'm so sorry.
Sorry.
No, I love it. I love your feistiness, Terrain. It's a source of.
If there's one thing I'm gonna fight for after unions, it's podcast quality content. Okay. Okay. There needs to be some good sound in here.
That's right. So ozone becomes bozone, and the example one there, I don't have it right in front of me, but basically it's the layer of air that keeps dumb people from understanding, like bozo, from understanding good ideas. Unfortunately, unlike the ozone layer, there's no forecast that the boson layer is going to degrade. So the next one is you take ignoramus, you replace the M with an N, and you get ignoramus. Jay, you got that one pretty fast. What do you want to? What's that one?
Oh, an intentionally stupid asshole.
Exactly. Somebody who's both stupid and an asshole. I love that one, ignoramus. I'm going to try and bring that in my vocabulary. Okay, the next one is Doppler, like the Doppler effect, which I think is something about how sound changes depending on where it's coming from or the speed it's traveling. You drop one P and you get Doppler effect. You guys have any thoughts on what would be a good definition for Doppler effect?
I would imagine the Doppler effect would be one person taking a dumb idea and just spreading it as widely as possible, and other people going, "Yeah, that makes sense," and just continuing the essentially a dumbass echo chamber.
That's a good. I like that. Jay, you got a different version or?
I like the keystoned.
Okay, we'll come to that. We'll come to that.
Like, okay. I don't even want to do that one. You're like, I'm kidding.
So yes, I really like your strain, and in fact, somebody pointed out the other day that someone is actually, I guess, literally launching a new cruise ship called the Titanic 2, and that reminds me of what you said, because I'm like, who thought this was a good idea? Who thought that was a good idea?
I thought one of the jokes around it was it's probably going to have better success because there are a lot less icebergs around.
That is a good joke. Terrain, I like your definition. The official one, whatever that means, is it's the likelihood that a bad idea seems good because it comes at you quickly.
Oh, okay.
which is good too, but I like yours. Okay, foreplay becomes foreploy, PLOY.
I've got it, but I want to take turns, so I'm going to let Jay go first.
An action you take when you want to get something in return.
Yes. A little more specific. Go ahead, Terrain.
No, I like it. Mine was ridiculous. It's the act of like using sexual contact to butter someone up before you steal their wallet.
I like those.
That was better.
The official one is whatever lie you say to get laid.
Oh, okay. Whatever lie you say, that's awful.
Yeah.
I'd rather the theft.
Yeah. Okay, the next one is cute. This one's an all-age one after we went a little X-rated there. Graffiti becomes giraffiti.
Got it. It's graffiti that's high, so it's very hard to get
Right.
at. It's hard to clean
Right.
it up because it's done so high.
Right. That's actually even better than the real one is.
Is it real? Damn it! I thought I got this right.
No, well, I mean, what's right? The one that they say one was graffiti of a giraffe, but I like yours better. I think yours is better. Yours is so superior. And in fact, I was at once we had a chance to be in Scotland, and we were at a place where there were Vikings had come, and they do like runes. It was kind of writing. It was in a place, and it's funny because you would think it would be this like Odin came here, and it was all very like body. It was like Helga's got a nice ass, and one of them was this graffiti is very high, and it was like 10 feet up, and it was carved in stone, so it wasn't like spray. I was like, man, that is some dedication to your graffiti. Right? So funny. Okay, here are 3 that I made up, so there's no quote unquote right answer. We warmed up with the others. Now we're going to see if we can come up with a good definition. So the first one is we're going to change politics into politics. I'm going to put this in the chat. Politics becomes politics. So here, we're just having fun.
I got
okay.
one, but
I got one. I'll go first if that's okay, Turing.
Oh, you're right. It's your show. I don't get to.
No. Just because you guys. No. So a politic is a politician who stayed in office too long and they're just sucking the system.
I like it.
Oh, that would have been politician. Mine's not a good one.
I have it's similar. It's a politician who latches on to another politician in order to suck the blood of them to stay relevant. So my example would be after Donald Trump insulted his wife and accused his father of killing JFK. Ted Cruz then was a politic on Donald Trump's ass for his entire presidency.
Absolutely. And you know what? It was a little crowded because right next to him was Lindsey Graham with his big Southern mandibles dug into that ass too. Hi, Mima.
So you've watched the Seth Meyers version of Lindsey Graham, is that correct?
Sure have, Mima. Yes, for sure. That's good. I think I'm gonna. Yeah, that's good. I like that. Jay, have you got one you want to add?
Okay. You have topped me with that one.
All right. Well, I know you said one earlier. So keystoned. So we're going to go from keystone to keystoned.
What Pennsylvania did to Donald Trump in the November 2020 election.
I like that one.
Boom.
That's more on brand than mine.
Yeah, that's better than mine.
Well, mine was when you've smoked so much weed that you can't put your keys in the door.
That's very good. Mine was getting high on anthracite coal.
What
is
that a thing you can do?
I don't know if you can do it, but I'd say that you're gonna try to get keystoned if you live in Cole Township.
I mean, I do like that where in a more political sense where it's you're like you said you're high on the like false promises of like coal's coming back.
That's
right?
good.
I mean, people are all like, "Oh, I can't wait for the coal job." I'm like, coal jobs. They made the miners made unions because they were dying left and right and had black lung. I mean, you wanted was the wages for a day of work.
No, but I had when I was in elementary school, I took my trip to Crystal Cave. We know what's up. It's what's up.
Yeah. You think people are really dying to going back to hand mining coal in the dark?
Think not just that. I think what we are trying to do is make sure that not only we're just doing that, but like also, let's get some other dangerous, outdated industries back in action.
I like that. I like that. In fact, if you look at the number of people who die in the United States due to lightning strikes, which these days it's often like, oh, you're more likely to blah, blah, blah than get hit by lightning. If you go back 100 years, a lot of people died from lightning strikes because they were all working outdoors in fields, and farms and stuff. So let's go for it. Let's deal with COVID by making lightning strike deaths go up, so COVID doesn't seem as bad.
Have you heard some of the rationality or lack thereof over the last 2 years? Like, that fits.
Yeah, totally fits. I love how far off the rails we've gone. This reminds me of the early days of barnstorming when we weren't trying to be sort of as like polished, and we were drinking around my kitchen table often. All right, here's the last one, and I just had an idea for what it means, but gerrymander becomes Jerry Meander.
While I think of it,
Mm-hmm.
historically, gerrymander was created from a politician whose name was Gary. So
Correct.
They changed the pronunciation of the name for seemingly no reason. It could have been gerrymandered. That would have worked. That's I said that dumb fact to mask that I can't think of one.
No, this one maybe is the hardest. I'm gonna go mine because
Oh, sorry, you got. I got one.
No, mine is probably really bad. I'm gonna set the bar low. I'm gonna see if I can pull a Columbus here and fail up fantastically. That should be one to pull a Columbus, right? Except it's too insensitive about imperialism. But anyway, I'm gonna say gerrymander is when a G string goes so far out of the crack that it's a distraction.
That it's a distraction to whom?
To the person, they're like trying to fix it, and it's like, what are you doing with your hand? I got to deal with my gerrymander. I don't know. Okay. Clearly, I've never worn a G string, and no one wants me to.
I didn't. All right. I okay. Interesting.
Terrain, it's all on you. Or Jay, save the podcast.
I can't save it. Mine was gerrymandering was the slow and at times seemingly ceased ability of those to advocate for independent commissions to create districts rather than to allow politicians to draw their districts. Mine
No, that's good. That's good.
It might be good in a practical sense, but it doesn't involve the word G string, and I don't think it's that good. It doesn't. When G string's not there, it's like, what is the point of this then?
Yeah, listen, like whose mind is, if we were really dedicated to the cause, we could stop thinking about lingerie and G strings and come back to the important issues of gerrymandering, independent citizen commissions to redraw the lines. You're totally right, Terrain. That's where we should be. I mean, you're showing us the kind of good civic moral virtue that
I, the one who's been drinking Sprite vodka all night, am the mature one of the group.
That actually could be a selling point. Come on to barnstorming, because no matter how mature you are, Jordy will help you feel like you're the more mature member of the group.
Love it.
I'm so glad Taylor's in Sweden. He's never going to see.
That's literally in my head. I'm like, I wonder how Taylor would have reacted to the G string of it all.
Taylor is often after like an episode, he's like, I don't think you should have done this. He's like, honestly, Terrain, like with you one time, he was like, I can't believe you said that. I can't remember what it was. He was like, Terrain is never going to come on again. I was like, I actually thought Terrain thought it was kind of funny. I mean, a little kind of, edgy. It was something that was a little, oh, you know what it was? It was when I did the Google completion game, and it was like,
Yeah. You don't have to go back into it. People go back.
We'll put the link.
Go back and watch it. It's great. You'll love it.
I'm going to say that your sense of grace and your sense of humor were both, it was sort of neck and neck for how well you handled that. Yeah. So this is,
just wait until you play my podcast games.
I know.
Just wait.
Am I going to get an invite back one of these days?
Absolutely.
All right. We are wrapping up. We are, as usual, right on time, 24 minutes over. Terrain, Myrix, people can find you at Alcoholics, which I don't know if I can spell it. ALCOHILITICS.
I couldn't follow that. I'm gonna put it in the chat. I'll put the link to the Facebook page in the chat. You can find Alcoholics on all of the
places,
platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, wherever you get your podcasts.
Yeah.
You can also find me on a podcast called A Movie on the Rocks, where we, another fun drinking podcast where we talk about movies and sometimes have a drink while we do it. And I'm also on Twitter at Terrain Myrix. And yeah.
Which now I check every single time. It's TERRRAYNE, Terrain Myrix,
yes.
MYRICKS.
I can't wait until this is posted because I know for sure it's going to be wrong, and I just need to know how wrong it's going to be. Like it's no longer like is my name going to be spelled incorrectly? It's how are we going to spell my name wrong?
Tyrone my candela.
Can I just answer a real quick question? In the chat, it looks like you asked, what is an alcoholic? Which I believe that it is a politician that has run their course of trying to do any good and is now just sitting in their office drinking whiskey and waiting until they lose their re-election campaign.
I'm going to say Giuliani may be the platonic ideal of that.
I just got an image of him with the Just for Man running down.
Latched on to Trump's ass also. So I think that politics and alcoholics are often found near each other.
It fits the whole thing.
Good stuff.
I'm so glad I wasn't taking that sip when you said that.
Yes. Jay, you are on, I know you have a Twitter handle, but people, if they want to check in with you, probably, Facebook, you post a lot to the Huff for Progress, West Branch Pride, of course. Anything else you want to plug? Lycoming County Progressives?
That would be it for right now, I guess.
Yeah, I'll be your agent.
All right.
Are you still at the bar? Can people find you at the Democratic Club?
Once in a blue moon.
Nice. Excellent.
Or the Southern Grill, South Side.
Oh, I've never been there. Is it Southern because it's Southside Williamsport or because it has Southern food? So it's the same shitty Northern Pennsylvania food. It's just
yes.
I'm just kidding.
Food's actually excellent. The people are a blast.
I should. I didn't know about that. I have this idea that like one of the best things we should do for canvassing, especially for like me, is I should get a T-shirt that says, "I am the liberal your grandfather warned you about," and I should go into places that like sort of roadside bars like Mason's Grumpy Jars, one in Northumberland that always cracks me up. Like places where the windows seem to be about like 6 inches high and like 12 inches long, like no light, like that kind of a bar. You know what I'm talking about?
Yep. Hole in the wall.
Jay, will you go with me?
Absolutely. Sounds like a blast.
Don't you think that we would actually have some great interactions?
I've worn my Nasty Woman shirt over at the Southern Grill. Had a good time with that.
We could make it a new podcast. We could have like it's hard, it's illegal to record people without their knowledge, but I feel like there could be some really
people will sign a release if they believe that like they're going to get out there.
Look at those Borat
Give them
movies.
A free cocktail. They'll sign that paper. Good to go.
Okay. After 4 more minutes of bullshitting, thank you both. You guys are the best. I had a really good time. I'm going to end the stream. Take care.